This is a braided memoir essay that I wrote for one of my best friend's birthday, but I think in writing it, I discovered the beauty of writing again, so it's also been a gift to me. It's called The Stallion. I met Danny in Study Hall 101, where all we really studied was each other. At the sound of the lunch bell, we'd race up the stairwell yelling sorry past other students, but we weren't really sorry because we do this every day, racing for the best seat. I felt dizzy, like my legs were laughing with me, as I shoved past the cool kids I was usually too embarrassed to look at. Danny let out a big scream whenever I beat her. It wasn't so much about the reward of the seat, it was just the fun of the race. It started with sharing photos of sunsets, unfinished writing, roadmaps of our dreams, and holding in laughter when the study hall was too silent for us to erupt. It ended at the sound of our names being called at graduation when we were set free. We've shared a lot since then. Strawberry margaritas, bras, bathroom stalls, real sunsets, tears at my dining room table, bellyache laughs in the airport as we raced past people shouting, sorry. This time around, Danny was on a race of her own. A 12-seat yellow school bus she would gut and make into a home with her bare hands. She would sketch the blueprint in a study hall, where the shower would go, the fridge, even a pull-out couch for when John, Jeff, and I took trips with her. A little bunker under the main bed for the dog she would get one day, to protect her out on the road. A big one, she'd say. She planned to move with the seasons, see all the Great Lakes and meet all the great people there. If you knew Danny, even just for a day, I guarantee you that on that day, you'd know a stranger too. Anytime we went out to eat, she had to ask the server what their name was and if they were happy with their life. And she'd ask just like that, no oil on the pan. One time, she sent me a video of her singing Mariah Carey at a karaoke bar in a room full of strangers. But it cost to dream, so she took a job as a waitress after high school. She had to wear suspenders and take orders from her boss, who refused to look her in the eyes when he spoke. Some nights, we'd go surprise her at work. It was an upscale place where the servers wore white shirts and the guests wore smug looks. She didn't even smile when she saw us. She just took my drink and chugged it. We can't close till you guys leave, she'd say. And why'd you come so late? I watched her from table to table. Would that be tap or bottle? She said like an automated voice system on a phone call. How do you like your steak? It was never, are you happy with your life? After the first year of saving tips, she ripped out the seats. The bus looked so big without them. For the first time, I could envision where the bed would go. With each paycheck, another piece would appear, just like she sketched in her blueprint. But with each year that went by saving and building, she talked less about the states and the lakes, and more about the debt she was in, or the check engine light, or the tires that needed changing. I was sitting in my music studio the day I got the call. Whenever I saw Danny's name on my phone, it was either a holiday or an invitation. She'd much rather talk in person or not at all. To anyone. She'd leave her phone at home even on a hike. Lorita, she squealed through the phone. Yes, Danny gal, I twiddled with my guitar pick. Do you think Niagara Falls is pretty? She asked. I mean, I've never been, but I'm sure it's beautiful, I answered. The solar eclipse will be there this year. I was thinking we could take the bus. She's ready. I could hear her smile between her words. Really? That's so exciting. I'm so happy for you. Yes, I just need to learn how to drive her now. Road test? She laughed. Her voice sounded younger, like we were in study hall again. Hey, I'll gladly risk my life with you. That's like the only criteria for a proper solar eclipse trip. I laughed into the phone. We called ourselves the Solar Eclipse Hunters ever since our first one. It was our tradition to hunt them down and make a trip of it. When we hung up, I stared around my music studio, or what was supposed to be my music studio. My microphone buried in the corner behind orders waiting to be shipped, lyrics on my wall fading against the paper. I was happy for Danny. Watching her turn her dream into her reality has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. I thought back to her blueprint in study hall, to the braces on her teeth and the glasses on her face, and to the woman she's become. I could feel tears swimming in my eyes. I didn't want to make her moment about me, but as they rolled down my face, I could taste sad salt. How did her dreams make it out of the blueprint? while mine were still taped to the wall. I thought back to our first eclipse trip in South Carolina. It was the summer after high school, and our parents begged us not to go. They came up with every worst-case scenario they could imagine. By the end of the trip, stranded outside a Crackle Barrel with a broken ankle and a can of tuna, we couldn't stop laughing about how right they'd been. On the train ride home from the trip, I wrote about our adventure. That was back when I wrote because I wanted to feel the moment all over again, not because I wanted to prove I had something to say. "What you got in there?" John asked, glancing over at my journal. "Us," I said. I passed him my notebook and he read aloud. "We saw a bedbug on a motel bed and let out a screech so loud that the biker in the room next to us banged on the wall. We shook our clothes out and shoved them in our suitcases, running out the room laughing. Only it wasn't so funny when we sat at the Waffle House that night until sunrise because the solar eclipse had left every other hotel in South Carolina completely booked." Although I guess it was still funny because at the table, we all laughed, rationing one waffle between us until dawn. I could hear audio from Danny's camera. She was reviewing her footage from the trip. Back then, she filmed everything just because she wanted to remember it. I could tell it was the footage from the night we pool hopped. "Okay, but how do we sneak in?" "It's easy, just pretend we left our pool card in the Uber." Our laughter filled the silent sleeping bus. Danny tapped my shoulder, and I looked at her in between the seats. "Yeah?" I asked. "What do you think our lives will look like on the next trip? Do you think we'll be the same people?" she whispered. The next eclipse would be 7 years away on my birthday in Niagara Falls. When she asked me this, I imagined for a moment I was one of her strangers, and she was asking me one of her famous questions. "I hope so," I whispered back. 7 years later, at 26, I was riding home from Niagara Falls in the bus we had spent years imagining. My smile swallowed my face as I looked over at my favorite people. Jeff, who still wore the same glasses. John, munching on the same brand of trail mix from our first eclipse. And Danny behind the wheel, driving us into her dream. We were all silent. The only sounds were the spaces in the cabinets clanking together. I had my notebook out, but the pages were empty. I wanted to write about the trip we had just taken. I thought about the train ride home from South Carolina when I wrote about our adventure because I wanted to feel the moment all over again. But now, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to capture the moment, as sweet on paper as it was in my mind. Even if I did, I was afraid no one would ever read it. I wrote in my head instead, staring out at the highway. I pictured my life as a movie, and I was reading the voiceover. At the age of 18, being broke feels like a warning ticket you get off with, but being broke at 26 feels like a jail sentence. "Get your look-up pics," we shouted through the crowd, holding up the Polaroid camera. $5 a Polaroid. We were short on money for gas to get home. Our only options were to ask John for money or sell Polaroid pictures of people looking up at the eclipse. We had already borrowed from John's corporate paycheck for gas to get there, and we didn't want to piss him off, so we decided on the Polaroids. We pitched the idea to John like it was supposed to be fun. "Oh, come on, people will love it. It'll be like a little competition of who can sell the most." Our box of Polaroid film had 60 exposures. We only needed 40 to make it home. We sold 56. The remaining 4 exposures we kept between us, one memory for each of us. Later that night, to celebrate, we took shrooms. We drove to our campsite, and just as we arrived, we heard a clanking from the engine of the bus. Danny was sweating even though it was cold outside. John and Jeff were silent. By the time road service arrived, the shrooms had moved past my stomach and into my heart. While they were all huddled by the mechanic, moving money around in their accounts, I was trying not to laugh as I watched the trees sway in the wind. Danny kept saying she couldn't wait for the mechanic to finish so that her night could start, so that we could move the bus closer to the water, and she could enjoy her shrooms in peace. I didn't understand why we couldn't just walk to the water and wait for the mechanic to finish. I wanted to take her hand and pull her with me to the lake. I wanted to kiss her cheek and tell her that the night had started. I wanted her to understand that the night was here all along. No matter how much I wanted to write about this, my hand wouldn't move. I was too afraid I wouldn't capture the moment right, so I swallowed it and held it in. Jeff took over driving so that Danny could get some rest. She laid her head on my shoulder as she looked through her camera footage. "Get any good shots?" I asked as I brushed my fingers through her hair. "Yeah, some," she said quietly. The camera beeped as she fast-forwarded through the footage. "I mean, I don't know, what if nobody watches this?" she asked. The engine hum hung between us, the wind blasting in my ears. "I would watch it," I said. She laughed and shook her head, but I didn't say anything funny. I went on, "I'm serious, you're just used to it. You're too close to what you built, but when people see this, it's something special, babe." She lifted her head from my shoulder and tapped my book. "And what about this? Anything special you want to show me?" she smiled. "Not yet," I said. I looked around the bus she'd built, at the shelf she'd measured, the skylight, the home that she made. I gripped my notebook tighter. The page was still blank. I stared in between the lines, judging invisible ink. I glanced over at my bag swinging with the bumps of the highway. I wondered, had I ever unpacked my dreams? After Niagara Falls, we all came home. Months later, Danny was ready to leave on her own. She seemed so tired, even though she hadn't gone anywhere yet. She'd start in her mother's Garden State driveway and drive across the country until she reached the end of her journey, in which she hoped would be a state of success. She had each state planned out according to her schedule. By August, she'd be in Seattle. She would put her vlogs out in real time, hoping that they'd become enough to sustain her. If they didn't, she'd have no job, no money, no magnet from the state of success to stick on the fridge. "Well, this is it, you guys," Danny said from the driver's seat of the bus. The heat of the engine burnt my ankle. I reached for her hand and held it tightly. She quickly rolled the window up and waved goodbye through the glass. She turned her face away, but I didn't have to see her to know she was crying. I couldn't understand her fear of leaving. When she put her foot on the gas and waved her arm out of the window, all I saw was a gate unlatching and a stallion running free. I looked around in the parking lot, and when I could no longer see the yellow of the bus, I heard the gate latch slam shut in the back of my mind. I stood still in the empty parking lot, staring down at my boots on the pavement. I wanted to run after Danny and catch her by surprise, the way I used to race her up the stairs. I wanted to hear my legs laughing. I wanted her to scream. I pictured her under the stars with nothing but the wind in her hair and her dreams on her saddle. But when I pictured her running, it didn't feel like a race anymore. It felt like a journey. With that thought, I heard the click of the gate open, and I ran. I let go of my plan B, and I ran with the stars. But now that I'm running, I wonder, when Danny sees me out in the valleys, in the meadows, will she let out a big scream? When she sees that I am free, will she notice that she is too? It's more fun to run than it is to arrive. Thank you for listening. Happy birthday, Danny. I love you.